faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Oh, yeah. Hi, this is Sally with the Book Talk. Today, we're diving into the book, The Art of Thinking Clearly. We all wish to think clearly and make smart decisions. But dreams are big, reality's tough. Hmm. From tiny buys online to big career moves, lots of folks can think back and find a heap of decisions they regret. Even folks seen as smart often end up doing dumb stuff. Some economists keep guessing where the market's headed, but they're wrong most times. And CEOs, they drop millions, even billions, buying companies that just bleed money. And why is it so tough to make the right call? The book says it's cause our minds are full of traps. One slip, and we're stuck heading down the wrong path. To make smart choices, we gotta learn to spot these traps. The author, Rolf Dobelli, is pretty legendary. Born in Switzerland, he's both a business guy and a writer. He's made tons of investments, started Get Abstract, a big deal site for business book summaries, and put out novels and psych books, loads of life experience. Plus, with a PhD in economics, Dobelli's got sharp insights into life. And his network? Huge. From big shot business folks to brainy intellectuals, he's rubbed elbows with top-tier elites. Along the way, he dove into social and cognitive psych research, mapping out common mind traps. He calls these traps cognitive biases, or thinking biases. The end result, this book, The Art of Thinking Clearly. The book got rave reviews right out the gate. In Germany, it hit #1 on Der Spiegel's bestseller list, beating out Steve Jobs for the top spot. Then it got translated into 13 languages and sold worldwide. McKinsey's CEO, Claudio Fescher, called it super practical and scientific, just brilliant. Wall Street legend and Black Swan author Nassim Taleb says Dobelli's got the smarts and the creativity, a combo we haven't seen since the Renaissance ended. The book's packed, covering 52 mind traps. I've boiled them down to 3 big groups for you. These traps that often ensnare people are narrow perspective, statistical errors, and irrational impulses. Next, I'll break down each category's specific manifestations and solutions for you. So when making decisions later on, you can reference this to avoid mental traps and think clearly. All right, first up is narrow perspective. When making decisions, ideally we'd consider all factors and weigh them carefully before choosing. Take job hunting. You shouldn't just consider salary, hours, and environment, but also the company's and industry's future prospects. If it's a sunset industry with shrinking markets, it might shut down within a couple years. Even with great pay, joining would waste time and energy, but narrow perspective blinds us to this. Oh boy. For comprehensive thinking, here are 2 common traps: confirmation bias and availability bias. Confirmation bias means we filter out contradictory information since we dislike opposition and only seeing what confirms our views. The author calls confirmation bias the father of all cognitive traps. Why is that? Well, think of it this way. This way, then cognitive traps wouldn't arise. For example, some elderly blindly trust authority. Just put a white-haired man in a lab coat with chief physician credentials, and they'll believe anything, even when their children present facts and reason patiently. That due to confirmation bias, they trust these so-called doctors over their children's information. If they could overcome confirmation bias by seeing evidence of fake authorities or real authorities making mistakes, they'd stop blind trust. Confirmation bias is super common. Whenever we have preconceptions, we fall into this trap. Yep. Like when Zhang San buys expensive weight loss pills, desperately hoping they work. When weighing himself, if his weight drops, he credits the pills. But if it increases, he dismisses it as normal fluctuation or, having eaten too much. No big deal. Thus, he can't objectively evaluate the pill's effect, likely wasting money without results. Economics is where confirmation bias hits hardest. Before the 2008 financial crisis, blind optimism permeated America's entire investment community. Everyone was investing aggressively, like lending money to people who couldn't repay. For investors, this promised huge profits. It had worked fine before without issues. Mhm. Even when analysts pointed out red flags in economic data and warned of crisis, they were dismissed as overly cautious or alarmist. Only when the subprime crisis exploded, triggering global financial chaos, did everyone wake up and regret ignoring the warnings. Oh boy. Another form of confirmation bias is called worsening before improvement. If people are unfamiliar with a field, they might fall for this trap. An author shares his own story. While vacationing, he got sick with severe pain. A local doctor prescribed antibiotics 3 times daily, warning symptoms would worsen before improving. After taking the antibiotics, his pain indeed intensified. And when he called the doctor, he was told to increase dosage to 5 times daily, with more pain expected. Days later, unbearable pain forced him to rush to emergency care. The diagnosis? Appendicitis requiring immediate surgery. The surgeon revealed the doctor had no medical training. Tourist areas often hire such scammers, and this trap is everywhere in daily life. Scammers claim their method works, but warn it'll worsen before improving. This fuels confirmation bias. Victims ignore worsening symptoms. If things improve, the scammer gets credit. If things worsen, it proves their prediction. Improvement is coming. Whether things get better or worse, the scammer always seems right. Now let's discuss availability bias. Availability bias means we judge the world only by vivid examples we recall, ignoring what we haven't seen. Why do we miss other possibilities? Because everyone has blind spots and our brains love flashy, concrete stories. So we generalize from our limited experiences to imagine all scenarios. A folktale illustrates this perfectly. Two farmers, after a long day's work, imagine the emperor's life. How awesome would that be? Finally, they decided, since the emperor is so rich, he must carry water with a golden pole. Well, not this extreme. Many people make the same mistake as these farmers, treating isolated cases as universal truths. For instance, some see Zhang Shuiliang smoking and drinking, yet living past 100, so they think tobacco and alcohol don't harm health. Others get poor quality items online once and declare all e-commerce a scam. Doctors fall prey to availability bias too. Many favor certain treatments and apply them indiscriminately. Another form is survivor bias. This means since success stories are more visible, we overestimate success odds. Online, we see inspiring stories, like an extra acting for years, suddenly cast as lead by a famous director, becoming an overnight star, or a writer toiling for a decade, whose novel becomes a sensation, royalties pile up, and film rights sell for millions. Where someone quits their job to open a trendy cake shop that goes viral. That in reality, successes are rare exceptions. As the author puts it, behind every successful writer are 100 who can't sell their work. Behind each unsold writer are 100 more who can't find publishers. And behind each unpublished writer, hundreds who never finish a manuscript. So how can we escape availability and confirmation bias? The solution? Seek out different perspectives. The author offers several suggestions. First, collaborate with people who think differently. They offer diverse viewpoints. This approach is used in many large organizations. To avoid blind decisions, they create roles specifically to voice objections. For example, the U.S. Department of Defense has a red team. Their job is to identify mission risks and flaws, killing flawed plans early. Second, since our brains easily forget counter evidence, write down your ideas and actively seek opposing proof, like documenting failures or hidden risks. List them point by point. With it, written in black and white before your eyes, your brain can't ignore it even if it wants to, naturally leading to more careful consideration. During this process, pay special attention to so-called special cases and exceptions. Grab these exceptions and study them closely. Understand exactly how they occur. This helps us think more clearly. Additionally, for the worsening before improvement trap, find reliable indicators that reflect reality to judge actual progress. For example, when a company restructures departments or reforms operations, it'll inevitably impact performance, causing sales to dip. But we can still track other metrics like work efficiency, post restructuring, or new business rollout speed to gauge whether the overall trend is improving. This way, we escape confirmation bias and gain more accurate judgment. All right, that covers narrow perspective. Next up is the second category of mental traps: probability and statistics errors. Probability stats are a common tool. We often compare likelihoods to choose actions. We also decide resource allocation based on event probabilities. That our brains struggle with probability, leading to various problems. Oh boy, here I'll cover 3 common errors: neglecting regression to the mean, zero risk bias, and the conjunction fallacy. First, neglecting regression to the mean. Regression to the mean means statistically, events swing between extremes and average levels, naturally trending toward the mean, often unrelated to external factors. For instance, NBA fans know even elite shooters can't maintain peak accuracy every game. After hot streaks, their percentages drop before rising again. Weather works similarly. After record-breaking heat, temperatures usually fall. After a month of constant rain, sunny days become more likely. This happens because extremes don't last. They always regress to average. Ignoring this leads to flawed attributions in life. Take Lisi. He's had terrible luck. Just got criticized by his boss, and his girlfriend left him for someone else. After a long day back home, he found his wallet stolen. Talk about the worst luck ever. So Lisi went to a fortune teller, spent a fortune on a luck-changing ritual. Do you think his luck will improve? The answer is very likely yes, but it's got nothing to do with the ritual. Because a streak of bad luck is an extreme. It can't last. Even doing nothing, his luck would bounce back. The book gives another example. A company's regional manager sent the bottom 3% in motivation to a motivational training course, hoping to boost their drive. After the course, sure enough, these employees weren't at the bottom anymore. But does this mean the training worked? It's hard to say. Because their motivation might naturally fluctuate, it just hit rock bottom before training. Oh, even without it, their drive would have recovered. The point of regression to the mean is to remind us that things have their own natural patterns of change. When analyzing why things change, we should dig deep into the process, not just assume simplistically. Just because someone did something doesn't mean it caused the change. Finding the real cause helps us make smarter decisions. Now let's talk about the zero risk trap. This is when we irrationally chase zero risk. Imagine a revolver pointed at someone's head. The cylinder holds up to 6 rounds. Each trigger pull fires a random chamber. If there are 4 rounds in the cylinder, how much would he pay to remove 2? If there's only 1 round, how much would he pay to remove it? Studies show most people pay more to remove the single bullet because that guarantees no chance of death. But probabilistically, in the first case, death risk drops from 2/3 to 1/3, a 1/3 reduction. In the second case, it drops from 1/6 to 0, a reduction of only half the first scenario. In other words, people spend more money to reduce less risk. That's obviously irrational. The reason behind this is that people overvalue zero risk. They feel they need 100% safety. So, to totally wipe out tiny risks, people are willing to pour in crazy high costs, but this ends up causing new problems. A classic example is the US passing a food law in 1958 that banned any cancer-causing substances in food. The rule had good intentions, but it just wasn't practical. For instance, in stuff like cheese, bacon, canned foods, all kinds of preserved goods, they contain carcinogenic nitrosamines. And grilled foods, they've got multiple cancer-causing agents too. This sounds scary, but as the saying goes, talking about toxicity without the dose is just nonsense. As long as they're within safe limits, these things won't actually cause harm. Um, Trying to remove them completely isn't just time consuming and costly, it also means adding other additives. Doing this is super expensive. Plus, those additives have obvious side effects, even dangerous ones. It's basically pointless. So the law never got enforced. Really, risk is an unavoidable part of life. Fixating on zero risk, it's not necessary and it's impossible. What we can do is reduce risks where we realistically can. Like with takeout, choose legit restaurants. For travel, pick safer options. And at home, stock up on emergency gear. After that, focus on your health, wealth, and relationships. Enjoy them. That's living a high quality life. Okay, so we've covered the zero risk obsession. Now let's dive into the conjunction fallacy. This means people overestimate how likely something is because of a convincing story. For example, which one seems more probable to you? Option 1, the airport shuts down, flights get canceled. Option 2, airport closes cause of weather, flights canceled. Many folks pick this cause 1 has no reason, while 2 sounds super logical and persuasive. But actually, option 1, just airport closure, flights canceled, is more likely. Because it's not just weather, plane malfunctions or even terrorism could shut down the airport. So option 1 covers way more scenarios than 2, making it more probable. Even experts fall for this fallacy. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman split oil experts into 2 groups at a conference. He told Group 1 annual oil consumption would drop 30%, and told Group 2 that since oil prices would surge, consumption would drop 30%. Obviously, many factors affect oil consumption, like the strong push for clean energy or higher gas taxes, all leading to lower usage. In other words, while the first group might have accepted Kahneman's scenario, reality showed the second group thought his prediction was more likely because the oil price surge story felt specific and persuasive, making even experts overestimate the probability. So, Kahneman believes this happens because our quick reacting intuition favors compelling narratives. So before slower rational logic kicks in, intuition jumps to conclusions, causing us to overestimate likelihoods and waste resources. The author shares his own story. After September 11th, he found a company selling specialized terrorism insurance during a trip. Just seeing terrorism insurance reminded him of the recent attacks. He got swayed and paid extra for it over regular travel insurance. Later, he felt foolish. Terrorist attacks are extremely rare, making the insurance a bad deal. Even more absurd, regular travel insurance already covered terrorism. It just wasn't marketed dramatically. Buying special coverage was pointless. So when judging probabilities, be extra wary of stories embedded in descriptions. Don't rely on gut reactions. Instead, strip away the narrative. What's the actual probability? Use rational calculation as your decision foundation. Having covered probability errors, let's discuss the third mental trap type, irrational impulses. As the saying goes, impulse is the devil. Often, even after weighing all factors and calculating risks, we might still act impulsively when deciding, losing rationality. For example, closets overflow with clothes, yet some see a 60% off, limited time sale, and, ignoring they'll never wear it, can't resist buying more. Here are 2 impulse-driven biases, action bias and omission bias. Action bias means taking action even when it's useless or harmful. But we just can't help wanting to do something. For example, outside a nightclub, a group of young people are arguing loudly, looking like they're about to fight. If a young officer sees this, he might lose control and intervene immediately to prevent conflict. But a seasoned veteran cop would choose to observe and only intervene when actual fighting breaks out. A UK study found that premature police intervention might escalate conflicts, actually increasing injuries. Action bias often appears uh, during uncertain situations, like sharp market drops or surges. Even unsure if it's long term or short term, many investors can't resist trading. In stock markets, those who profit are usually the patient ones who trade after seeing clear trends. As investing legend Warren Buffett says, in investing, action doesn't necessarily lead to results. Why do we prefer action so much? Because for ancient humans, hunting action was far more valuable than thinking. Back then, danger lurked everywhere. When strange sounds came from the jungle, our ancestors' first reaction was to flee immediately, not wait and observe. Patience offered no benefits. If you waited for the tiger to leap out, escape was too late. Through natural selection, this action overthinking tendency passed from early humans to us. So when facing uncertainty, we feel anxious. This emotion pushes us to act to relieve discomfort. Knowing this, when situations are unclear, try to stay restrained. Tell yourself, waiting to see clearly before deciding is fine. You can also create action limiting methods. For example, some investors use dollar cost averaging, only trading stocks on fixed monthly dates. Other times they ignore market data. Extremists even delete stock apps after trading, reinstalling only next month, just to minimize actions. Having covered action bias, next is omission bias, the opposite. When both action and inaction could cause harm, people often choose inaction regardless of harm level because resulting damage doesn't feel like their fault, emotionally easier to accept. Imagine this. You're the head of the drug administration. A new drug for terminal illness awaits approval, but it has strong side effects. It could save 80% of patients, but might kill the other 20%. Would you approve it? The psychologists found most people wouldn't. It feels like personally killing those 20%. But if rejecting causes more deaths, people think the disease killed them, not me. This responsibility dodging impulse causes many problems. Oh yeah. For example, execs might stick with old products rather than invest in R&D or new markets. Because if R&D fails, wasting resources, they get blamed. The result, products become outdated and eventually they lose market share. Some parents know vaccines have rare side effects. Even though skipping vaccines risks more illness, they might avoid them because if side effects happen, they'd feel responsible. How to overcome omission bias? Uh, Before deciding, tell yourself, if I'm not part of the solution, I'm part of the problem. This means inaction maintains or worsens problems. Omission bias's core is dodging accountability. This phrase makes us realize, even choosing inaction, we're still responsible. It helps us calmly compare outcomes objectively, choosing the better option. With that, we've mostly covered the art of thinking clearly. Let's recap. Today I introduced 3 major cognitive traps. First type, narrow perspective. Confirmation and availability biases make people see only supporting evidence, ignore dissent, or mistake anecdotes for norms, preventing comprehensive consideration. To overcome it, collaborate with dissenters, deliberately seek counter evidence, document it, and reflect. Second type, probability and statistics errors. People misattribute causes by ignoring regression to the mean, overspend chasing zero risk, or overestimate probabilities via conjunction fallacy. Knowing these helps analyze reality more accurately for rational decisions. The third category is irrational impulses. When situations are unclear, people fall into action bias and act impulsively. We can overcome action bias by cultivating patience and limiting our actions. When both inaction and action could cause harm, people tend to choose inaction to avoid responsibility. To overcome omission bias, we can remind ourselves of our responsibilities. Don't evade, but make decisions to minimize harm. All right, that wraps up our interpretation of the art of thinking clearly. You'll find reading notes below the audio. See you tomorrow.